Shabbat Shalom. Purim is past, which means the next holiday is Pesach, Passover, absolutely right. And this year, as hopefully you all saw in your little flyers and your postcards, we are not going to be doing the second night community Seder on the second night, because second night is Motzei Shabbat, is the end of Shabbat. And that creates certain wrinkles when you're trying to do a Seder for 100 or more people. Instead, we are going to be doing a third night Seder. That is to say, a Seder on the end of the second day, which means Sunday night. Gets a little confusing, right? Well, you don't even have to try and work out the Haggadah. That's my job. But I thought I'd bring a little bit of the quirk that this is going to introduce. You see, we can't just do the identical Seder on day number 3, because there are a few wrinkles with it. Well, there's one major wrinkle with doing the entire Seder verbatim on that second time. Does anyone happen to know what that would be? An actual halachic impermissibility. It's only going to affect a few things. Why is this night different? No, because we can still claim that that statement is a learning topic about the difference of the Seder, even if this particular night isn't the Seder. It's perfectly fine. We can study that year-round. But you're right that it is something that we say, and that we can't say on that third night Seder. Well, we can count the Omer. It's just going to be a different night. It'll be a different number, but we can definitely still count. But we cannot say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has made us holy through the commandments and commanded us to eat matzah. We can't say that, because that would be a bracha levatala. That would be a null and void blessing. You see, Judaism takes the name of God, the Shem, very, very seriously. And we also take the statements of Malchuto, God's sovereignty, very, very seriously. And when you put those two together, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, well, you've now just said something very, very consequential, and you better mean it. It better be about something important. And there are a couple of things on the Seder that, were we to say those full formulas of the blessing, it wouldn't be true. And thus it would be a bracha levatala, and thus we would be violating Jewish law. I gave you one example. We cannot say that God commanded us to eat matzah on a third night Seder, because God most certainly did not command us to eat matzah on a third night Seder. He commanded us to eat matzah only on the first night. Since we live in the diaspora, we do extend that for the second night, but there is definitely no commandment to eat matzah on night number 3, or indeed on day 3, or 4, or 5, or 6, or 7, or 8 in the diaspora. You don't have to eat matzah at any other time, although if you're eating bread, it'll need to be matzah. And there is, of course, one other thing that we are eating that we also cannot say that exact blessing over: the maror, the bitter herbs. Likewise, maror is only for the Seder itself, not for our community educational program that happens in the shadow of the Seder. And thus I've had to amend the blessings as putting together for how we'll be doing them, and practice trying to chant them, because it really throws you off stride when you are skipping certain words, and still keep them grammatically correct, because you can't just delete words in a sentence and still have it make sense. And it's been a little bit of a head scratcher. But this is not only a problem for a rabbi to figure out, because there are times when we are doing our own brachot, our own blessings, where this can crop up. A bracha levatala is a running concern for all of us. Imagine you are sitting at home and you are about to eat your lovely banana, and you go ahead and you begin to say the blessing for the banana, and you say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri ha'etz. And as you say the word eitz, it suddenly comes back to you, Rabbi Neely's voice booming through the microphone: bananas aren't from trees. According to Jewish law, the banana does not count as coming from a tree, because the banana tree is not a perennial fruit tree. It is something that grows each year. It is a bush. And by the way, bananas are also berries, according to botanists, but that's a whole nother issue. And so you've now said a wasted blessing. You can't eat the banana with that blessing because it was the incorrect blessing. But you've also said, you've invoked God's name and God's sovereignty, the Shem Umalchuto, and that means you have now, God forbid, taken God's name in vain. Much more serious than saying OMG, this actually matters. But don't worry, there is a get out of jail free card. According to Jewish law, you can transform a bracha levatala, a false blessing, into an okay statement. All you have to do is say, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. May his glorious name have glory for his sovereignty be for all time. And what you are effectively doing by appending this after your mistake blessing is you are saying, I didn't mean that was a blessing. I meant that was a general sentence about how amazing God is for making fruit from the tree. Not that this banana is a fruit from the tree. I just happen to be thinking out loud in general about the blessing of trees. But now I'm going to eat this banana, and of course I'm going to say, Berei Periha Adama for the banana, because I'm not an idiot. As if we haven't all been there and done that. But wait, there's more. Yes, you get to the end of the blessing, you can always say, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed, which if you're not familiar with it, is that part we say privately to ourselves after the Shema. But what happens if you realize it halfway? What happens if you are halfway into your blessing and you realize maybe you shouldn't be saying a blessing over this at all? Maybe you have begun the Shehechianu, for example, because you think you are eating a piece of fruit that you have not tasted in the last 30 days. It's just back in season. But as you are about to say the blessing and you are 3 words in, you suddenly realize, no, wait, I had one of these last week. And people call that a senior moment, which I don't think is fair because I'm not officially a senior, but I have them all the time. Well, there's a special way that you can remedy it. Because you don't want to complete the blessing now that you've realized that you're making a mistake halfway through. But you have already said, Baruch Atah Adonai, and you don't want to just leave it hanging there. So you append it. Again, Lamdeni Chukecha, who teaches me his rules. Because that is a verse from Psalm 119. That begins, Baruch Atah Adonai, and by doing a quick left-hand turn into Tanakh, you salvage that statement. You turn it from being an error into being an expression of thanksgiving for God for teaching us God's rules. How more appropriate is it to take what would be a mistake and instead turn it into a statement of gratitude for the opportunity to learn? You see, Judaism doesn't want to just throw rocks at people when they make mistakes. It's actually very, very rare that people get stoned in Judaism. Judaism wants us to learn when we've made an error. Judaism wants us to, more importantly even still than learning, to fix when we've made an error. By having this system in place, by having a way that we can recover from a bracha levatala, one of these mistaken or null blessings, these errors of kavanah, of intention, the wrong choice when we went to go, or being on autopilot, which happens to all of us sometimes, and we just slide into the blessing for the candles when we meant to say the blessing over the Kiddush. All of those types of mistakes have a way to be salvaged. And by salvaging them, we are proclaiming the glory and majesty of God, which I think is one of the most profound statements of our faith. That when we've made a mistake and we know we can fix it, that is a statement of God's glory. By making a mistake and knowing that God has already pre-made a method for us to fix that mistake, to learn from it and not feel guilt or shame or not feel that we are now irrevocably distant from God, but instead turning it into a celebration of God, that is indeed the ultimate celebration of God. God is not here with his chukecha, with your laws, with your chukim, just to be niggling, just to be overly legalistic. It's not meant to be a dirty word. God is trying to give us guidance and structure, and our tradition trying to bring that to each of us. But in that structure and guidance, it is not about being obsessed with the details in and of themselves. It is about using the details as a pathway towards God, and even using our errors as a pathway towards God. There is never a place where we can be, and never a mistake that we can make, no crime that can be committed that makes us irrevocably distant from God. Yes, some are harder to overcome. Some cannot be quick left turn just by 3 words in and now we're still safe. Sometimes it takes much more heavy spiritual lifting. But what greater praise of God is there that we know that it is always possible to find our way back, to find the right words, to fix the mistakes, to be able to be together with God again. And ultimately, that is what we are looking forward to on Pesach, and being together with each other as well. Shabbat Shalom.